Hello and welcome once more to the House of Hammer. Come on in out of the cold and the dark and make yourself comfortable. Smokey's got a fire going. Admittedly, he's just done a lot of washing and is using it to dry his underpants, but still. Kev's made dinner earlier and there's plenty left if you fancy it. A lot left. All of it, in fact. I hope you're fond of Sprouts Mexicaine. And I was just looking for an after-dinner game to play. I've ruled out Twister, as we all ended up in accident and emergency last time. We can't play a Mousetrap because Ingrid Kit has stolen all the mice. We can't play Who's Who because Kev has drawn little moustaches on all the cards. And last time we played Monopoly, I threw the board out of the window in a sulk when I landed on Smokey's hotel-adorned Park Lane. So instead of any of that, let's talk about a film instead. In this episode, we're taking a look at Hammer's genre-crossing 1953 movie The Flanagan Boy. Part sporting drama, part femme-fatale noir thriller, it's another interesting addition to the Hammer catalogue. But before we delve any further into the film, let's take a step back and see just where we are in terms of the movie landscape at this point in time. And to do just that, here's the sempiternal Kev Moore.
As we're going to be stuck in 1953 for a while, because it feels like Hammer were producing a film every fortnight, I thought I'd have a look at what else was happening as far as the movies were concerned. When it comes to Hollywood, it's pretty much business as usual, with the Megabucks studio system predictably seen as the king of the hill. So instead I thought it might be interesting to look a bit closer to home and see if the same was true. I've previously told you of the record-breaking box office figures of the 40s, but the 50s saw the start of a serious decline. In 1951, cinema admissions had stood at 1,365 million in Britain. By 1960, the figure was down to 500 million. In 1956, the ever-deepening losses saw the Rank organisation close 79 of its cinemas, with Associated British Picture Corporation closing 65 a year later. It's been said that British films had become timid, complacent. The director Lindsay Anderson once described the British cinema of this time as snobbish, emotionally inhibited, willfully blind to the conditions of the present, dedicated to an out-of-date, exhausted national idea. And when you look at what was on offer in 1953, it's very hard to disagree with him. Hollywood had Gentlemen Prefer Blondes, while Cricklewood had Is Your Honeymoon Really Necessary? Yes, that is really a film. For the most part, the Wild West was the easy money spinner in the US, likely because of the inbuilt flag waving, whereas the most popular genre tended to be war films in Dear Old Blighty for pretty much the same reason. It's no surprise that The Cruel Sea was one of the biggest British films of 1953, but it failed to make a noticeable splash anywhere else. The other popular genre was comedy, and after all, when things are looking grim, making fun of it seems to be an Englishman's reflex, followed closely by A Cup of Tea. Henry Cornelius's Genevieve was a box office smash, and while Michael Balkan's Ealing Studios had some of their biggest comedy successes during the 50s, they still failed to see the end of the decade out, with 1953 being one of their quieter years. Meanwhile, Hammer was having one of its most fruitful, 8 films in 12 months. It's not hard to see that their B-movie formula was definitely working. The majority of domestically produced films ran at less than 80 minutes, designed specifically to fill out the programmes of the desperate cinema chains. They were in an ever-increasing fight for their lives due to the explosion of telebox sales, thanks mainly to the coronation of Queen Elizabeth in June. While digging through the library, an interesting side note is surely that the influence Hammer was starting to have on the home front. There are some great drama films in 1953, such as 3 Steps in the Dark, Street of Shadows, and Death Goes to School. All these could be easily mistaken for Hammers. And as well as that, I started to notice the names of directors we already know, with Francis Searle, Godfrey Grayson and John Gillen having a particularly busy time of it. Of course, there's plenty of on-screen talent, past and future too. Most notably, Diana Dawes in a little film called Is Your Honeymoon Really Necessary?
Thank you, Kev. And so, the Flanagan boy, aka Bad Blonde, aka Terror in the Ring, aka The Woman in Trouble, was released on the 10th of April 1953. Directed by Reginald LeBourg and based on the novel Kid Flanagan by Max Cato. It stars Tony Wright as the titular Johnny Flanagan and Barbara Payton as the alternatively titular Bad Blonde, Lorna Vecchi. The plot is as follows. Sharky, as played by Sid James, tours the country as part of a carnival with his boxing booth. He challenges carnival goers to get in the ring with one of his prize fighters. If they can last 3 rounds, they win a $5. Young Johnny Flanagan takes up the challenge. Unbeknownst to Sharky, Flanagan has been training with boxing coach and old friend of Sharky's, Charlie Sullivan.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. What's the matter? Ain't you working today? 7. Hey, fine, you're out. The winner, Johnny Flanagan! See me in the changing tent.
Sure. Don't forget the $5, huh?
I was quite intrigued by the whole boxing booth thing, so I had a look into the history of them. What I found is that they are, quite naturally, intrinsically linked to the history of the sport of boxing as we recognise it today. For over 200 years, such booths were actually the beginnings of many great boxing hopes. Their origins lie in bare-knuckle boxing matches, which consisted of 4 sticks in the ground, roped together, inside which 2 fighters would contest a bout merely for the nobbings. This being the money that spectators would voluntarily put in a hat that was passed around. The more entertained they were, the more money they'd cough up. After the introduction of the Marquess of Queensberry rules in 1867, the sport of boxing changed, and eventually the days of bare-knuckle pugilism would come to an end. With the introduction of rules, including the wearing of gloves, shrewd entrepreneurs could see the business potential, and as such, booths began to pop up on fairgrounds. Looking altogether more professional, and dare we say it, civilised, promoters could challenge men in the crowd to prove their strength or impress their girl by taking on a prize fighter. And of course the public paid to see this, in hopes of an underdog knockout or the challenger getting a good drubbing. This meant guaranteed income for the fighters and the promoter, not the reliance on charity based on the performance. For the boxers, it was an unrivalled opportunity to gain experience and develop skills in a very short space of time. A boxer had to be fit, strong and healthy to make a living on the booth, and they were obliged to take on all comers, which often meant conceding age and weight and taking on any number of fighting styles without prior warning or readiness. It was a tough profession. As well as fighting, sometimes multiple times a day, when the booth arrived at a new location, it was the boxer's job to erect the ring, the tent and the platform, and then afterwards dismantle it and pack it up before the booth departed. They were also called upon to time-keep when not in action themselves, and sometimes to step up and put on an exhibition bout if no challengers could be coaxed from the crowd. When a booth was set up and ready to go, the blare of a trumpet or the banging of a drum would summon an expectant crowd to the booth in readiness for a new set of fights. The boxers would stand on a platform in front of an ornately decorated backdrop, often depicting ring heroes of yesteryear. A man called the Barker or the Spieler would introduce the fighter, would tell the crowd something of his record and reputation, and then call for a challenger from the crowd. If the challenger lasted the 3 rounds, he'd win a prize. Go 3 rounds and win £1. Billy Wood of Dumfries would recall setting up a ring at the Durham Miners Gala in 1919. The booth opened at 7 a.m. and closed at 1 o'clock the following morning. During that time, Wood fought 18 colliers, knocking 15 of them out. In addition to men like Wood just trying to make a living, the booths would become a proving ground for many of Britain's greatest fighters. Jimmy Wilde from Merthyr was the world flyweight champion in the 1920s and once went 101 fights unbeaten with the nickname the Ghost with the Hammer in his hand. Other champions included Freddie Mills, Benny Lynch, Tommy Farr, Joe Beckett and Jim Driscoll. Despite the tradition of black boxers in booths on fairgrounds, up until 1948 a colour bar existed in British boxing. This meant that no fighter of coloured skin could fight for the British title. This prevented hugely successful prizefighter Len Johnson fighting officially for the British Championship until the 1940s. The bar was lifted in 1948 when Dick Turpin defeated Vince Hawkins to take the middleweight championship, becoming the first black champion to be recognised by the British Boxing Board of Control. The decline of boxing shows on fairgrounds is linked to the decision by the Boxing Board of Control in 1947 to limit and partially restrict the use of licensed boxers in booths, but it wasn't until the 1970s that booths disappeared for good, the consequence of changing social attitudes and tightened safety legislation. Anyway, back to our film. Sharky can see that young Johnny Flanagan has potential, and so he and trainer Charlie Sullivan take him to see Giuseppe Vecchi, a wealthy Italian with the connections to put Flanagan on the path to glory. However, there is a problem in the form of Giuseppe's young wife, Lorna, who proves to be something of a distraction.
I can't work while she's watching me. Get her out of here.
What's the matter? Is her crazy? She do some harm?
You can't talk to me like that. What do you think you are, military secret or something?
I'm through.
Johnny. Relax, Johnny. Lorna, she my wife. She belong here. What's the matter if she watch? I don't like such attitude.
Maybe you don't like women.
No. Do me a favor. Go into the house. The boy is shy.
All right, Chippy. Just tell the body not to flatter himself. I didn't come out here to see him. I've seen better bodies hanging in a butcher's shop.
Whilst training at Giuseppe's mansion, Johnny begins a white-hot affair with Lorna, and his boxing begins to suffer as a result. When Johnny loses a big match owing to his mind being elsewhere, he has a decision to make. But Lorna has plans of her own. She's sick of Giuseppe and sees Johnny as her way out. But just what is Johnny prepared to do?
Why did you do it, Lorna? Why?
When I heard you were going, I had to do something. I had to hurt you, Johnny.
Lorna.
But it doesn't have to be like that. Like I told you, something could happen. We could do it easily. Look. I signed a false name at a drugstore in London.
Lorna, you're crazy.
You don't understand.
Only that it's murder.
Johnny, I'd do anything for you. If you won't do it, I'll do it. All right, give it back to me. Johnny, give it back to me.
No.
Forget it. I'll do it. Johnny. Darling.
And that brings you up to speed with the plot, so it's time to head over to the round table to see what we thought of it all. And there I'm joined by Smokey and Kev.
Gentlemen, the Flanagan boy, or Bad Blonde, or the postman always rings thrice.
Like it.
An interesting little film. It's got some odd turns.
This actually surprised me. I read the synopsis before watching it, and obviously it sort of has echoes of various other sort of noir films, but also erring more on the side of the femme-fatale angle. So I was relatively intrigued before viewing. And then the sort of the femme-fatale element doesn't really come until quite late into the film, really, when she turns from being a sort of just a sort of scheming wife into a really scheming wife, you know, and I thought that was a really interesting way of doing it. I'm going to put my cards on the table straight away. I really enjoyed this. I think it's a really decent drama, and something we've been lacking in a few Hammer films is that I really liked the ending as well. I thought the ending was like really exciting, and one other thing that I'll put right out there, not that I have seen every single one of the things that he's acted in, but I'm going to put my flag in this hill and say this is the finest Sid James performance I've ever seen. I think he is wonderful in this. He is the star of the show in my eyes. I think he's absolutely brilliant.
We get the laugh as well in this.
We do, finally. We get this. Yeah, a few times, yeah.
He definitely makes up for Tony Wright, who really struggles acting-wise, I think, early on. You can tell this is his first film. It's charming, great to look at. I can see why he's cast, well cast aesthetically, but boy, oh boy, in the first half of the film, does he struggle with any acting. Mm-hmm. But what I would say is the boxing scenes, because this film, as you'll have heard already, it largely centres around this Tony Wright character, Johnny, who's a boxer, Johnny Flanagan. And the boxing scenes are fantastic. I mean, you know, the boxers actually defend from punches that are thrown. There's no sound effects to make it sound like. Yeah, exactly. No, I thought they were excellent. It brought a real, because early on the first boxing scene is in a sort of carnival, and the way it's directed, it brings a really gritty, realistic feel. You really feel like you're in there, smelling the smoke and the sweat, and hearing
it's
the
pure
cheers.
spit and sawdust, isn't it? It's really
It's fantastic.
Yeah.
And it's one of a few scenes that did actually get under my skin a little bit. I mean, we've talked off pod, and I don't mind confessing to the listener. The first time I watched this, it didn't get me at all. I didn't enjoy it. Yeah,
that punch didn't land.
It really didn't. No, it's by a mile.
Nice.
But on a second watch, I really enjoyed this. And there's a few scenes I'd like to pick up on that are very effective, and all of the boxing scenes are fantastic.
I wonder if it's Bob Simmons, because Bob Simmons was the stunt coordinator for a lot of the James Bond films, and he's in this. He does the bit part. He's one of the Barkers at the beginning.
Oh, okay.
And I wonder if he's had something to do with the fight scenes, because he was a boxer. He was a proper lad.
Absolute lad.
Yeah. So it's a possibility that he's had his hand in that.
I don't see why not. Yeah, I mean, that would make perfect sense. But then, and then going back to Sid James, I mean, as you say, he brings that working class realism to the part that he needs. You know, he's been a bit browbeaten over the years, you can tell, and he's not the most glamorous lifestyle of being in a sort of circus tent, doing rigged boxing, as we find out right at the beginning. But I thought he handled that really well. Yeah, I can definitely see where you're coming from with Tony Wright. He does struggle at the start, but he does get better as the film progresses, especially when he's playing an almost impossible part of being used and beaten and whatnot, and also, conflicted because of the events that transpire. So I think he does get better.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah, and I mean, you made a joke of it at the start there, Kev, but this is a British remake of The Postman Always Rings Twice. I mean, that's undeniable.
It is.
Yeah. And as good intentions go on Barbara Payton's part, she isn't Lana Turner, so she doesn't quite get it. I don't get me wrong though. I do like her attempt at a femme-fatale, but it's just not. It just doesn't quite ring quite true for my liking.
Yeah,
it's too subtle, and it's nothing to do with her. It's the way it's written. Because you said this right at the beginning, Smokey. You don't realise she is the femme-fatale until there's only 20 minutes of the film left. But on my second watch, the hints are there all the way through. There's a really odd dynamic between her and Johnny to begin with. They don't like each other, but they're meant to not like each other because they're like basically uncontrollably attracted to each other. But that doesn't bleed through onto the screen. No. And you get this awkward feeling until you realise about 3/4 of the way through that she's actually manipulating him.
Yeah.
But there's one scene, though, that I'm determined to bring this scene up because I want to talk about it. There's a scene where the two of them don't get on. So Lorna's husband, Giuseppe, throws a birthday party for her, and with some dancing because she loves dancing, but he can't dance. So he puts her and Johnny together to have a dance. And this scene, now, chaps, I can only speak for myself, but I found this really, the words I want to use, sensual, erotic. It really did it for me. It's their body language, their chemistry, but dear me, that's an absolutely fizzing scene. That you can sense the sort of sexual tension between the two of them. It's absolutely fantastic.
I completely agree.
And that was bizarrely going to be one of my questions. I was going to ask about the chemistry. Do you think it works? Because obviously we watch it a few times, and this time round when I watched it, I realised that there is some kind of an attraction there with Johnny. On the first scene that Lorna comes into the film, the first piece of Lorna you see is her leg. And she's putting her stockings on. And you can see that he's got the radar out. He's like, ooh, hang on. And
never heard of that before.
But you can see there's that little, ooh, she's attractive.
Yeah.
And then, it kind of gets dampened a bit because she opens her mouth and he hates her.
Agreed, yeah.
But yeah, it's a very good dynamic.
Agreed. And I'll also throw into the mix is the scene just slightly later when she's put a record on and she's dancing to it just because she loves dancing and she was a former dancer until Giuseppe took her away from that life. And that, along with the scene you mentioned, Ben, is really erotically charged because Johnny is staring at her doing her thing, and Giuseppe sees him staring, and he doesn't mind at all. It's because she's his basically, but it's really is. There's this electricity that is in that scene as well, and I think that it's very much to the film's credit. But just going quickly back to something you said there, Ben, which was about the problem with the writing, and also with her not being portrayed as the femme fatale enough earlier in the film. It's also is the fact is that there's a scene midway through, I think, where her and Johnny have a sort of clandestine rendezvous in a barn. And he mentions Giuseppe, or she does, and she just sort of says, "Oh, he disgusts me." He's and all this. But up until that point, we haven't seen her being disgusted by him. She's actually been quite nice. And he's been nice to her. And if there have been any hints, then it's been very subtle, too subtle on my mind. There should have been more of, sometimes like in films like you've got the gangster and the gangster's moll who is repulsed by the gangster, but they stay with them for the, the money or the wealth, the big houses or whatever. They needed a little bit more of that to do. But I don't know. Maybe it's the runtime, or it's just too short, or maybe, as you say, it's just bad writing. But it's a shame they didn't play more of that.
She's got a couple of eye rolls.
Only a couple.
Yeah, I was going to say, I doubled down on what I said before, though. Kind of in agreement with what Kev said there. It's just too subtle. I think the audience is invited to basically look at this portly old Italian man and this beautiful blonde, and they just assume that she's not in love with him. You're right, though, Smokey. Yeah. It needs to be explicitly written into the script, and it isn't. And that's what makes the opening half of the film quite awkward, in the sense that you don't know where characters are emotionally. Because we've seen enough, even in our sort of Hammer Odyssey so far, to know that it's not always the case that you can assume two characters don't love each other. Because we've seen plenty of films where mismatched characters clearly do love each other, and you're not meant to assume that. But yeah, it was odd, but which stifled the sort of the crackling illicit romance a little bit that they had. But just to return one time to the scene I'm on about, sort of the body acting. There's no kissing, there's no hugging. It's he smells her hair and she presses her cheek against his cheek, and there's just something about the way they move which is deeply, deeply effective. I don't know if it's how they've been directed, or given I want to give the young lad Johnny some credit. Maybe he's a better physical actor than he is one sort of chiming out his lines. But no, that scene, even on the first watch when I didn't really particularly engage with it, it was absolutely standout scene.
Yeah.
Well, thinking about it, every time you see those two together in their illicit scenes, if you like, they're never more than a couple of inches away from each other. They're always in a close embrace. They're never far away. So yeah, the only subtle hint I can think of where you get to see a bit of Lorna's affections and how she hasn't got any is when Giuseppe actually kisses her when they go out for a meal. Then it's at the dance as well.
Yes, yeah.
And that's the only time you see her recoil in horror.
Yeah.
You think,
you're right. There is that.
But that's a fair way in.
Yes, that's true. Yeah, it is actually a bit far into the film, isn't it? Yeah, that's interesting. But also something that I think, actually, you've got to give the film a lot of credit for. How many films have you seen where the wife of someone, rich or powerful or whatnot, the rich and powerful man is kind of evil. He can be a bit of a and treat them badly. Giuseppe is a really nice man.
He's a puppy.
He's like a big Italian teddy bear.
He really is.
He's lovely.
He is lovely. And you've got to give him credit. That's really refreshing because he's not a philanderer. He doesn't really flaunt his wealth too much, really. He could do a lot worse. He could be a lot worse, I should say. And so I found that really nice because you've got this poor sap in the middle who is just a nice guy. and then when you finally, you get to the point when you realize that these two younger, quote unquote, more attractive people are plotting his downfall, I was there going, I don't want to see his downfall. I really like Giuseppe.
You don't.
The thing is, though, it's one of the unwritten rules of films, isn't it? That if you're seen to be punching above your weight, it's never going to end well
This is
for
true.
you. You know, and again, I think that's what's in her sort of written into the script as a kind of unspoken truth is that, you know, it's never going to work between them two. And she hasn't much, you know, because he's charming and funny, but like in the same way that like a mad uncle at a wedding is, not that someone you want to be with as a sort of partner for the rest of your life if you're a beautiful young woman. But I must admit, you know, slight spoiler, listener, if you've not seen this, Giuseppe doesn't make it to the end of the film, and his scene where he dies is it's if you're invested in the film, it's really quite upsetting. It really is.
It is.
It really, yeah. I mean, and they played it really well. Both of them did. You know, and
yes.
I think that scene, for its believability, is not that high. I think both actors.
Ludicrous.
I think I was being kind, but I think I think both actors sold it really, really well.
There's a wet man in my boat. Oh no.
Is that euphemism?
It might be. I think Giuseppe wishes it was. But not like that.
Frederick Volk's performance in this, it's weird as well because he's great as an Italian, which we don't see a lot, especially since he's a German actor, but that's quite a bit of a switch. But the fact that he makes him so lovable, you do feel for Johnny when Johnny really doesn't want to go through with Barbara's plan. Lorna just wants him off, and she's getting Johnny to do it, and he doesn't want to do it because, like he says, I like him. I don't want to.
he's given him everything.
Yeah,
he's been nothing but nice to him, and and of course, he's incredibly conflicted. But you have just reminded me. I just want to read you guys something. This was a review someone left for this film online, and they gave it a 1 out of 10. Right?
Ooh, I like these.
1 out of 10.
These are better than mine.
Okay, I'm not going to read it all, but I just want to see what you think about what they say here, because we were just literally talking about Frederick Volk. And this person says, one of the worst things in it is an over-the-top, scenery-chewing, story-stopping performance by Frederick Volk. He plays the cuckolded husband and does it with more Italian cliches and stereotypes than anyone could think possible. I think whoever wrote that, what you said, Ben, did not engage with this film. Because that's a really short-sighted way of looking at it.
Counterpoint. I think they've got some. I think there's some merit in what they've said. I'm not saying I entirely agree with them, but you know the amount of times you see he utters the lines, "Oh, one a big happy family." You know,
That's
we
true.
must get that
no,
a dozen times.
Don't get me wrong.
You know,
he does, but it's not.
I don't find him a distraction. No, I don't find him a distraction in that sense. But there is two things I will say. One, he's a very repetitive character. A lot of his lines repeat. And two, I probably didn't understand 45% of what he was saying. You know, and genuinely couldn't work out what on earth he was on about quite a lot of the time. I just thought, I've got the gist of it. You know, that'll do. But, you know, didn't really... I only sort of got 2 in every 10 words in that particular utterance. So, for all I do agree with you that is far too harsh. But in the same way, there is a grain of truth in what has been said there, I think.
Fair enough. I just think it's a little too harsh for my liking.
Oh yeah, it is. I agree with that. But as I say, I can see where the sort of the neutron of their idea is coming from.
Fair dues.
Picking up on your family man kind of vibe, right now. Yeah, the Vecchi family. My word!
Yeah.
when they crop up 13 minutes before the end, we get the Vecchi clan turn up on the doorstep to meet Lorna and make sure that everything's legit. And yeah, they're just something else, aren't they?
It's like the woman in black's brought her interpreter.
And her Batman.
I did like it. I did like it. These three Italians all dressed in black suddenly appear, and it was like the wraiths have just descended on it.
Yeah,
I mean, I'd be terrified.
Yeah.
And they are as well. Even I love it because even Sid James just said to him, "Do you know what you need to do? You need to go and have a nap." And they just went, "Don't tell us what to do." And it's like, holy crap! I thought it was wonderful. Just this sort of dark, sinister presence just suddenly appears, who apparently has like second sight and can prove that someone isn't pregnant when they say they are.
It's Johnny's line of that old woman, she knows and I'm afraid. It's brilliant, yeah.
I love that line. He goes, "I'm scared of her, Sharky. I'm scared of her."
One is not tired when one seeks the truth.
Will you be staying long?
As long as is necessary.
I ended up digging through because I thought, Marie Burke, is she actually Italian? Because she doesn't speak one word of English in the whole film. And no, she's from London.
Oh, she's English.
Well, that's phenomenal.
She's brilliant.
Absolutely. Wow, my word.
She
might now be the standout performer.
Yeah. She absolutely nails the crazy old Italian lady, doesn't she?
Wow.
It's fantastic.
Absolutely. I'm so impressed with that.
Yeah. Again, the second sight when she points out that Lorna isn't pregnant. Oh, the pregnancy as well.
Oh yeah.
We've seen this trope before, haven't we?
We have.
In the Rossiter case.
Oh, the Rossiter case. Yeah, they did it there.
Yeah. Did any of you buy it? Because I was in two minds.
Straight away, I knew it was a. And this is me talking as well. straight away, I
Mr.
knew
Sudoku.
it wasn't happening.
Do you know what? Now I'm thinking about it. Actually, yeah, I did buy it. Because I thought it was a really good device. Because at first, obviously, she uses it as a plot to keep Johnny on side, and then when things don't go her way, she shifts it to, "Oh no, I was lying. It's Giuseppe's baby." And I thought that was really clever as well, because obviously then that puts more peril onto it, and that works. But then I just personally took it as a really great twist when they said, "Nah, she's not up the duff at all." So it's just like, all right, and so I actually did buy it. Yeah,
yeah, I was in two minds. The first time I saw it, I thought, now she's legit, but is she just telling Johnny this because he doesn't know how women get pregnant yet? He's too young.
Thinks he's giving her a special kiss.
Yeah, he's held her hand. That's it.
There's the reason. One of the things I picked up on early on was that she tells him that she's pregnant just before he's due to fight his big fight.
Yep.
And obviously he's distracted by this and he loses the fight. And there's a throwaway line afterwards that she gives about how basically she's delighted because it's upset Giuseppe and she likes to see him upset. And you think, immediately tracking backwards, I just thought, oh, okay, that was her plan all along, was to manipulate him. You know, at this point, she's not thinking about killing him. She just wants to upset him.
Yeah.
You know, and obviously things move on from that. But I was suspicious when she said she was pregnant. But as soon as I heard her say that, I thought, nah, there's no way.
Now that I think about it, that line just kind of washed over me. So I didn't even put two and two together on that one. You're absolutely correct.
Yeah, again, it's too subtle.
Well,
yeah, exactly, Kev, too subtle.
I think you're right. It's bizarre, though, isn't it? It's not very often we say, right, there are some parts of this film that need to hit you over the head with like a hammer instead of being too subtle. It's not very often we say that. So that's fascinating to me. But if we're talking about sort of favorite scenes and whatnot, the one I absolutely adored is when Sharky goes to confront Lorna in her bedroom, and she's just, she's kind of like a princess in bed,
with,
having her breakfast, and she is not phased in the slightest with Sharky just saying, right, you need to leave the boy alone. You've got him wrapped around your finger, blah, blah, blah. And, and she says, oh, well, I'm not going to London to watch him box. It's silly. And Sharky thinks he's kind of won, but she thinks she's won. But as soon as that door closed, she throws a little girl hissy fit. She throws her breakfast tray and she stomps and she gets a cigarette, and it's like, and I loved that scene. I thought it was wonderful.
Never going to get that marmalade out of that duvet. As soon as I saw that, I just thought, oh, you selfish cow. Someone's got to clean that.
Well, it's going to be a servant, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. But,
get some baking soda. Yeah. But no, it just, I mean, what a great scene it was. And again, I'm just going to keep returning to this. Sid James nails it. he doesn't take his eyes off her the entire time. He is telling that he's laying out the rules. And I just thought it was a brilliant scene and so well played by both of them. Barbara Payton delivers it so well as well. Just switching from this ice cold temptress to a spoilt brat is brilliant.
Sharky actually is an odd character when you think about it, because it's like, what are his motivations towards the end? Because he knows what's going down. He knows because he finds a clue in the boathouse. It's it's a very subtle clue. It was
clever.
Yeah.
It's nicely done.
It's nicely done.
Very much.
He finds a clue.
Because you can, sorry, just to say, Kev, without revealing what the clue is, you can see, I noted when the clue was put there, thinking, oh, please remember to pick that up on your way back, otherwise it's going to give the game away.
Ben's been boat murdering before, obviously.
Ben the boat murderer.
The thing is that Sharky knows exactly what's going off. I mean, he already knows that they're at it.
Well, he sees them out of a window, doesn't he?
He sees them very early on, so he knows that they're actually going behind Giuseppe's back. So
in the love barn.
Well, he notices it at the dance, doesn't he? When they're first becoming friendly, quote unquote. He spots it straight away. He knows something's up.
Well, Giuseppe don't, because he's too busy getting hammered.
Oh, he is
on
absolutely
champagne as well. First class hammered on champagne.
Oh yeah, champagne and dancing. You're bound to.
What I would say is that that's one of three sort of carryovers for Barbara Payton from the last film. One, a significant barn. Two, bit of swimming.
Yep.
Three, she tries to top herself.
Oh yeah. Oh my God.
Wow. Well done. Yeah. My word.
All right, I'm done here. I'll step out now for the rest of the podcast.
Has she got the weirdest contract rider ever?
They're all in there.
This is what must happen on these films.
I love a barn.
And then blue Skittles for afterwards, please.
No brown M&Ms.
Forget Giuseppe.
I can't. He'll go through hell when he finds out. It'll kill him.
If that happens, there's no problem anymore.
You're wasting your time with that sort of talk.
He's a rich man, Johnny. And I'm his wife.
What are you getting at?
Something could happen. You could make it happen.
Well, I feel like, without going any further into any kind of spoiler territory, we're best off wrapping up. Scores and any quick extra sides that you want to throw in? Ben?
I enjoyed this. Really enjoyed it, in honesty. So pleased to have watched it again and enjoyed it a lot more than I did the first time. You know, it's quite a notable sports drama. I know it's obviously really early and not many people have heard of it, but if you like boxing, there's a fair bit in there for you, I think. And we've talked about the flaws of the film. The sort of femme-fatale thing is a bit truncated towards the end, but it tries to mash a couple of genres together with limited success. But as you know, Smokey says, Sid James is great. The acting's decent. Even Johnny gets better as the film goes on. I'd probably give it a 7, but it's a strong 7. 7 out of 10, I'd give it. And what I would say is, and I'm not going to give away what it is, but the very last frame of the film is kind of heart-wrenching. And it really upset me on a second watch. And again, going back to something I said earlier, and that has already been echoed by Smokes, if you're engaged and involved with the film, I think it'll get you as well. So yeah, I liked it. Another solid entry into the sort of Hammer canon.
Fair.
Agreed.
Smokey?
Yeah, I can't really take it anything away from what Ben just said. As I said, this surprised me of how much I did enjoy it. This is the most I think I've really enjoyed a Hammer film since Lady in the Fog, which after our online screening the other day, I love even more. It's gone up an extra point. So Flanagan Boy has issues. It does. It's not perfect, but it's a really enjoyable ride, and it looks great as well. The print we had was fantastic. And as you say, the boxing scenes are so well filmed. Oh, speaking of the boxing, by the way, I would just like to point out that I love that the man with the most Russian-sounding name in the entire world is supposedly a Scouser. So I thought that was quite interesting. Yeah, that was, all right, Mr. Kossoff, all right, so it was all it was a bit weird.
Can I just throw in at that point as well, in terms of being a boxing film, for all I have said, it's great, but the direction appears to be just hit each other as much as you can till he falls down. And there's no, which is fine. That's what you want to see.
That's called boxing. Welcome to boxing, Ben. But no, I really enjoyed it. As I again bang the drum. This is Sid James's film. He is absolutely outstanding. I loved him.
Phenomenal
in this film. I wanted Sharky to be my mate because he just I know he'd look after me, and I need looking after. So, and also I'm glad you mentioned it, Ben, because it reminded me that final scene, as you said, or the final frame indeed is heartbreaking. And there are so many echoes there, from my humble opinion, of Freaks and of Nightmare Alley.
I was thinking Nightmare Alley. Yeah. Thank you.
No, it's undeniable. It's there. So I don't know if there's any connection. There probably isn't, but it so rings of either Freaks or Nightmare Alley. So I've got to give it a lot of credit for that. What a film. Really enjoyed it. And first watch was a 7 and then second watch was an 8. I think this is a wonderful addition to Hammer's canon. I think it's a great movie. How about you, Kev?
I'm pretty much in the same boat. I think it gets better on the second watch. The first time, it was just, oh God, I felt like I was just going through everything on slow motion. It really was painful.
Agreed. And I completely agree, Kev. Completely agree.
It was
some
really
of the texts
hard.
you put in the group this week. I didn't see you enjoying this at all.
Scathing.
Yeah.
But it was funny because suddenly, once you'd got everything locked in place, going back to it, it was like, oh, right, now we're here. I felt like they missed an opportunity as far as the Vecchi family. I feel like if they'd have been able to bring that in a little bit earlier and kind of pull that out a bit, because you could have really got some suspense out of that and some real, I don't know, creeping dread, especially with the woman in black. Oh my God. I mean, there's a great
I just love that's what we're calling it now.
I mean, there's a great line where she's, her interpreter says, "My brother was a rich man, now you have his money. Much good will it do for the both of you?"
It felt like a curse.
I was going to say, it does feel like they've cursed Lorna and Johnny. And it kind of pays off to a certain extent. We'll not go any further than that.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. It started off as a 5. I'm not going to beat around the bush. It was like 4, maybe 5. It was only getting a 5 because it had got Ian Wilson in it at the beginning. You know Ronnie Corbett's dad?
Oh, yeah, Ronnie Corbett's dad. I couldn't believe we hadn't mentioned him until this point, yeah.
With such a good sight gag. That it was, I was chuckling away. Yeah, brilliant.
And that was an extra point just for that. But yeah, again, rewatching it and seeing all the detail and watching all the tiny bits that make it tick, it's gone up to a 7. I'm definitely getting it 7 for this.
Wonderful.
Right, one question for you then, before we finish. In a year's time, or even if we look back at what we've seen in the previous one, is this one that you're going to remember?
Yes, definitely. Because there's enough unique about this film. I'm not, again, to go back to my rating 7, I'm not saying it's the best, but we've seen things in this film that we've not seen in other Hammer films and that I've not seen in any other film. So I'll remember it, yeah.
Yeah, there's more than enough to stick in the memory for this film. I mean, like, let me just pluck one out of the air. Like, what can you remember if I just suddenly throw at you, like, Never Look Back or... You know what I mean? See what I mean? Yeah, but when you say The Flanagan Boy, I reckon, it's a good title as well. A lot better than Bad Blonde. That's just too on the nose.
Although, in fairness, if any film was made to be called Man Bait or Man Trap, it's this film.
That's a very good point. But also for the fact is that you can disagree with me if you wish, but I can see this as being a future screring for us as well. I don't think
I've already got that penciled in while you've been talking.
There you go. I think this is it's going to stick in the memory, this one, and I'm going to be watching it again. What do you think, Kev?
Yeah, but I reckon it's one that is, like you said, I'm basically going to repeat everything you said, so I'm not going to say that.
It's more efficient that way.
Yeah, all I'm going to say is that there's a cracking line where she says, maybe he doesn't like women. And it's,
Yeah.
oh
That
my
was telling,
God.
wasn't it?
Yeah. Especially for the time, and you think, Christ almighty, did they get that past the American censors or not?
Nope.
I also love the way I love the way she refers to him as the body as well.
Yes.
Which is really nice.
And he is. Let's face it.
The guy's built.
Yeah, one day he could be me.
It's what we all aspire to be.
Can you believe it? We've almost reached the end of this episode. But before we hibernate for another fortnight, just a quick reminder to give us a rating on your podcatcher of choice. If you enjoy what we do, it's a nice way to share the love. Similarly, you can follow us on the socials, on Twitter and Instagram at HouseHammerPod. Should you wish to contact us via this newfangled electronic mail malarkey, address your ramblings and sordid attachments to scream@houseofhammerpodcast.com. Speaking of getting in touch...
From time to time, we here at the House of Hammer receive a letter or two, a cry for help or an SOS, if you will, from a concerned citizen. I say from time to time, but it really has been quite a while, to be honest. Some may say we forgot that we did this segment completely. I, however, am not one of those people. But, wouldn't you know it, out of sheer luck, we were fortunate enough to be the recipients of one such missive, only this very week. Huh, what are the chances? It reads, Dear House of Hammer, that's us. My name is Johnny, and I was a merchant seaman, but now I'm training to be a boxer. All was going well with the help of my trainer Sharky, and I've been coming along leaps and bounds and winning every fight I've had. However, to my shame, I've become romantically involved with my boss's wife. Giuseppe, my boss, is a lovely guy, and I'm really hating that I'm doing this to him. But his missus is just so damned alluring. Oh, and you should see her dance. It's hypnotic. You might think that this would be bad enough, but now it seems that she wants him out of the picture. And as if that wasn't already a little extreme, she wants me to do it for her. She seems to have some strange hold over me, but I certainly don't want to hurt my boss in any way. Sadly, though, I can feel my resolve weakening. I really hope your response gets to me before I do anything rash. Help me, House of Hammer. You're my only hope. Well, my word, dearie me, Johnny. You have indeed gotten yourself into a bit of a pickle there, haven't you? This is not so easily solved. How about confiding in your mate, Sharky? He sounds like he's got a good head on his shoulders. Also, whatever you do, don't hurt your boss in any way, okay? You'll regret it for the rest of your life. Here's an idea. You know what I always do that clears my head? A bike ride. I know it may sound a bit silly, but find somewhere really picturesque and have a bit of a cycle round, and I'm sure any nasty ideas that have been put into that head of yours will instantly vanish. Yours sincerely, on behalf of all of us here at the House of Hammer, Smokey. There, that should do it. I'm sure this will get back to him in time and absolutely nothing tragic will happen at all.
And if you're listening, Johnny, and you, or indeed anyone else listening, has ever thought to yourself, I love the House of Hammer podcast so much I need to blow some coin on a kick-ass t-shirt, well, good God almighty, get on over to our online store for merchandise aplenty. Just have a gleg at the episode show notes and you'll find the URL that will whisk you off to merch heaven. And finally, should you want more of us, you can become a patron of the show at patreon.com/househammerpod. For as little as £1 a month, you can get extra perks and benefits, and for a little bit more, there's a bunch of extra content to charm your ear holes. So that's enough of the grifting. Until next time, it's goodbye from me, Ben Taylorson.
From me, Smokey.
And from me, Kev Moore.
And before you know it, we'll be welcoming you back again. Next time, there's a saint returning. Which is weird, as I didn't know he'd been away. Or indeed, had ever been here in the first place. Whatever. Take care.